Okay, I want that. Okay, welcome today to our webinar from the Scholarly Communication team. This is Measuring Your Academic Output. I'm Bob Klapdor, the Science Reference Librarian, a Master's in Chemistry and an MLS in Library and Information Science. Now, where do you start? The big thing is, where you start is what to count. What are the measures? What is quality? And how could you measure quality? There's some mathematical, statistical methods to do so. They're called bibliometric measures of quality. Now, starting with what to count. It's probably your most critical question. It varies by department. It varies by discipline within a department. You talk to your chair. Talk to your department's tenure and promotion committee. Ask other faculty in your area. See what's important as far as your academic output, okay? This will get you started on what sort of things do I look for and where do I put my efforts. Now, one of the things that comes with part of being a Tier 1 institution is grants and grant applications. The type of grant will vary by department, okay? And that's an important thing to ask in your department because it really differs a lot. What sort of grants? Will I be expected within my course of five or 6 years to be involved in a national research grant? It depends on your department, whether they expect that or not. In science and engineering, yes, they're going to expect you to be involved in those type of efforts, okay? Some areas it might be, involved in local grants, that type of thing. Your department is the best place to find out where it starts. The Office of Research and Sponsored Projects will help you with your grants, whether it's you're looking for grants, whether you're looking to have a proposal for a specific grant. They will give you extensive help. They have training sessions. Rely on them for a lot of information and assistance when you're putting together grants. Now, mentoring of research students is part of conducting academic research. So that's part of the process. And at UTEP, we've, over the last decade, have not only expanded the graduate programs, but we've expanded the undergraduate research involvement. So that becomes part of what you look for, and actually mentoring students to be with you 2 or 3 years. To actually have a research group and working with a research group. Now, I'm going to give you some overviews, and these are broad overviews, and these are my opinions. Is what is important to different disciplines. Now I'm throwing, you see here, wow, that's a range of disciplines, but science, engineering, but also I throw in psychology, and in many ways business. They really emphasize the academic research journal articles, scholarly books, scholarly book chapters. Those are of primary importance, okay? In some of those areas, in engineering, in geology, working as an outside consultant is quite important. And that's a major part of your academic endeavor. Now, conference presentations, while important, and a lot of what you do at conferences is networking. And getting to know other researchers at other places, getting ideas, running very early stage ideas that are coming out of your research, having those presented as papers, by you or by students you're working with, and getting feedback for those. But quite often they're considered sort of secondary output measures. I know faculty in chemistry, for example, that don't, after a decade or so, they don't even list those. They're conference presentations, okay? But in certain fast developing areas, such as computer science, they're much more important. Interestingly, as a field, that field also, partly because of the influence by IEEE, actually has a very high percentage of conferences where you actually submit a full journal article, not just an detailed abstract, and they actually publish the full conference proceedings. A lot of areas of science, they don't. All they do is publish the abstracts, okay? You want to ask in your department the importance of pedagogy-related articles. This will vary department by department. If you're doing things where you're working a lot with freshman classes or revising things in freshman classes, yes, pedagogy articles will be quite appropriate. But they'll also have some ideas of good places to publish those, okay? So that they'll be noticed. Now, in things like humanities, such as history, philosophy, musicology, religion, scholarly books and academic journal articles of importance, conferences can be more important than in the STEM disciplines. Importance of pedagogy articles can vary by department. Ask your department. You'll grow tired of my saying that. Check with your department, okay? That's important. In health sciences, it's academic research articles, book chapters, but in many of the health science departments at UTEP, pedagogy articles are quite important, okay? You're teaching people how to do physical therapy. Hey, that's something really important. You're teaching specific nursing skills. Pedagogy articles can be quite important in there. The importance of conference presentations will vary a little bit by department and by your specialty within the department, okay? Good example would be kinesiology, where you can do statistically based sports science research, but you also could do, your specialty might be articles looking at how to do a particular sport, how to train particular things, and you perhaps you'll even publish those in different locations, okay? So you publish it in something that gets it into the hands of coaches rather than get into the hands of academicians, okay? That can be important within your field. So check around with your department. You don't want to get caught just doing one and then find they wanted the other, okay? Now in education, pedagogy-related books and articles become much more important, okay? You think about it, a lot of education topics, you actually want to get that information into the hands of practicing teachers, okay? Now, practicing teachers are not usually looking a lot at academic sources, okay? But it's important you get things out where they actually find out about them. Research articles are important if you're applying for major national grants, though. Or if you're working in conjunction with, let's say, somebody in science and you're applying for some education-related thing in NIH or something. Research articles will be important for you to get major national grants. On the other hand, local grants, not so much, okay? They probably want to know, what are you doing to support the local teachers? What are they using of what you do research in, okay? Conference presentations can be more important than in the STEM fields. Now, performing arts, creative performances and works versus pedagogy technique related articles. A lot of times those will dovetail into people doing the same, okay? Workshops become pretty important, can be pretty important, especially invited workshops at conferences. Scholarly books and academic research articles might be a little bit more secondary into versus the creative performances. You have to check with your department though. How much do they want of what? What are they looking for? Okay. Now, why does quality matter? It's a major part of your academic reputation, especially when you get outside of UTEM. For competitive research grants, the research teams that are evaluating the grant, I've done this at NSF and a couple other places over the years, they will looking at what appears, okay, what is the grant about? But when they get to looking at, do we think this team, this researcher or team of researchers can do the project that they're applying for? We're going to start looking at the quality of their previous research output, okay? And the research evaluators will do this on a real-time basis. They'll go into Web of Science, they'll go into Google Scholar, they'll look at the quality of your previous research output and see that it's appropriate for the grant you are applying to in the project, specific project you're going to be doing. And I've seen grants that we all were real enthused about reading the overview for it, but then when we got down to getting into the nitty-gritty of it, we ended up going, oh, big thumbs down. Because even though it sounded really cool, they had the wrong team that didn't have the right background, okay? Now, another thing is quality helps you obtain subsequent publishing opportunities. And I use that term broadly, whether that's academic articles, books, invited presentations and workshops, consulting opportunities. They will be what you have done before impacts the possibilities you get for doing things in the future, okay? Now, can you put statistical measures on this? That gets to be an interesting question, okay? Now, some of it is we don't have a good way to measure, even though I will talk a little bit. There's something that's coming down the pipe in the very near future that might change how we do this. Right now, what you look at typically is you look at how often have other researchers made citations to your work. So you look at things called citation impact factors, and there are different factors that people in information science have developed over the years. Basically, a basic definition for an impact factor is the number of citations to your articles, total number divided by the total number of articles published, okay? Now, a big problem is citation patterns vary widely by discipline. They even vary by research specialty within a discipline, okay? So they're a statistic we can get hold of, but there end up being a lot of problems with the statistic, okay? We don't have a better statistic. Now, things like total number of citations to your research. They favor researchers with extensive publishing history. The true average number of citations, a very simple impact factor. Usually impact factors are listed in terms of looking at the most recent 2 years, the most recent 5 years. Articles from 5 years ago, how many times have they been cited from 2 years ago? How many times were they cited in the next 2 years? That type of thing. They can be influenced by a few exceptional articles from years ago. If you just look at total numbers of citations versus your article. Such as maybe you lucked into working for someone who was doing the very hot research project, and you did your PhD for them, and you published 10 articles, and all of a sudden they all end up being pretty heavily cited. And then you go and your subsequent don't quite do research in that area, but related, and your articles aren't, but your citations keep climbing. But it can be from older articles. So there is an aspect of what have you done lately? And when reviewers look at that for merit, promotion, and tenure, for grants, they will look a bit also at what has happened with your more recent articles. Did you change research areas? Okay, that type of thing. Now, index that has gained some popularity, both in terms of looking at individual researchers, also with respect to looking at journals, is the H-index. This is the simple definition of it. If you have, let's say, You have more than 12 articles, you have 50, 60 articles. But if 12 of those articles, the most heavily cited 12 article, and each article has been cited 12 or more times, your H index is 12. It doesn't matter how many articles you've published in total. It doesn't matter if it was 15 or 70, okay? It doesn't matter that your two most heavily cited articles were cited over 100 times, okay? Now, this factor does favor researchers who publish more articles over a longer period of time, especially if they do it within one research area. It also favors researchers who primarily publish in academic research journals, okay? Pedagogy articles typically don't pick up lots of citations. Maybe if you write a book about a particular technique, like the Johnsons did on cooperative learning, even though many people have been doing cooperative learning for decades and decades, even hundreds of years, and have been writing articles on occasion, they came up with some generalizations and they published some books, and all of a sudden they have huge numbers of references to cooperative learning, okay? But the technique really wasn't new, it was old. So they do, researchers who primarily publish in academic research journals, they're the ones that get cited, okay? Now, where do you look for these? You can look in the Web of Knowledge, which is its proper current name, but everybody knows it as Web of Science, okay? It has high quality information, almost 13,000 publications. It's a very large but selective journal collection. A big factor of how a journal gets to be in that collection is that it is heavily cited, okay? Within its specialized area. That's why I think it's like 236 specialized research areas at the moment. Very high quality information, very high quality work at looking at the citations at the ends of the article, with standardizing names of individuals, etc. Okay? You can improve the completeness of your individual data by using their researcher ID methodology to include name variants. Likewise, you also could improve it by getting an ORCID ID. And I will talk at the end about ORCID IDs. These are really useful. You can register and get one and tie it to all your research publications, okay? All your academic output. That way, people can pull your material very quickly using the ORCID ID, okay? In different databases and different journals in Google Scholar. And how do you search for Google Scholar? Yeah, there's researchers out in the state of Washington who's in business, but called Publisher Parish. It's at harding.com. It's a simple app, basically a small program you download, which allows you to do citation searching on the Google Scholar database. Google Scholar is the largest group of journals. Remember, it's still not exhaustive. Google Scholar also has an issue that not all journals allow Google Scholar to index their articles down to the cited references level, which means you're not picking up all the citations to your material because some of the journals wouldn't let Google Scholar look at the references, okay? The ends of the articles. Now that is a lot less of a factor now than it used to be, but it's still a factor. Now, this will usually give you the largest number of citations, okay? Now you can use this application/program to search Scopus by accessing the Elsevier development site. There's links off the Publisher Parish, since you have to first do a registration with the Elsevier development site to obtain an API key for searching Scopus. Now, if you wanted to search on the development site just by itself, then you have to actually learn to use something like Python or a similar searching language and download a whole lot of material on how to search Scopus using that in order to do it. In other words, there's a huge, huge learning curve. You get the API key, you can use this link off a Publisher Parish, and you can do a Scopus search. and pull out the references. Now, you also can get Scopus data by going into the Scopus preview, okay? UTEP doesn't subscribe to Scopus, okay? But you can access their citation analysis data, but it is in a limited form. You can do an author search. You also can use Scopus preview, go into the journal collection and find their journal indexing data, their citation data for journals. Now, gives you a basic citation analysis. It only lists your 10 most recently cited publications, okay? That can be a limit. If you went to the Google Scholar and used the app, did the linking so you get an API registration, so you get an API key, then you can get a full detailed list up to 200 articles can be pulled out of Scopus that you have published. I think right now, there's about maybe 5 UTEP faculty who can't pull all their articles out they're in Scopus using that, okay? Another option, of course, in addition to using Publish or Perish to get more information, you can ask one of the UTEP faculty who are editors for an Elsevier publication, because they will have some search privileges on Scopus. Now, problems and limitations, citation analysis. Getting numbers is nice. I'm a numbers guy, but variations in citation usage and frequency, even within a discipline, can be quite extreme. And even within journals within a discipline can be quite extreme, okay? I think even with biology, think, oh, they're all the same. No, microbiologies could be far higher citation rates than zoology, okay? Another problem, most academic conferences do not have fully published proceedings, so citation data is usually not available, okay? There is data available for ones that have published proceedings. Now, there's also inconsistencies when analyzing citation data from non-journal sources, and there's an intrinsic statistical bias favoring more experienced researchers, okay? Your numbers do improve with age. So, in summary, what to count? Ask in your department. Find out what matters, okay? Why quality matters. It's a big part of your academic reputation. How to measure it? You can do citation analysis. You can search in Web of Science. You can search in Google Scholar. You can search in Scopus to some extent, okay? A major advantage for you as an individual, though, register for an ORCID ID. It'll help databases and publisher to uniquely identify your specific publications. And something that right now the journal publishers, the big publishers are working on is measuring how often your articles, your specific articles are downloaded, okay? And the databases are working on that. The big problem is if everybody had ORCID IDs, they could probably put this together fairly readily and then send these outputs to libraries, even send them to the individuals with the ORCID IDs, so that you would know how often your articles are being downloaded. They've done some experiments. There's some stuff out there. There's going to be a lot more, I think, coming in the near future on this. This may end up being the future of it is, oh, not citations, it's let's see how many people are reading articles. Okay, that actually might be the real future. And on preprint servers, you can do that, and articles are 100 times more looked at, downloaded, than they are cited. So thank you for being here today. Any questions?